NDPA presents the Water Safety Champion Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the NDPA Water Safety Champion Podcast. I'm Adam Katchmarchi, the CEO of NDPA, and I am acting solo today. They kind of gave me the keys to do my own podcast recording with no co-host, but no fear, Alan Korn, half of the Water Safety Odd Couple, will be back with me next week when we talk to Julian Hefter. But today I am really excited for today's podcast because she is a water safety champion, lives and breathes this work every single day, and that is Connie Harvey with the American Red Cross. How are you, Connie?
I'm great, Adam. Thank you so much. It's so good to talk to you today.
Well, thank you for joining us on the Water Safety Champions podcast. I know, Connie, you and I get to do a lot of work together, but I'm not sure that everyone in water safety knows Connie Harvey's water safety story. So really excited to have you on the podcast and allow our listeners to learn a little bit more about your story. So let's kick it off. I'm going to ask the same question I ask every guest, which is, what is Connie's water story?
So my water story, probably like most of the people that you talk with, goes back to childhood for sure. This is kind of funny. We did an exhibit at the International Swimming Hall of Fame for the Red Cross history and involvement in water safety over the years. And in that exhibit, it has my beginner swim progress report. And for those of you who were taking lessons back then, that progress report meant that I didn't pass the first time. And I have the little arrows that said, this is what I accomplished and this is what I did not. I just think that's such a funny thing as I look back. But I had, I learned to swim when I was probably 6 or 7 years old is when my family really got us into swimming lessons. And we would ride the bus to the city pool in the summertime and learn how so we could learn how to swim. And I grew up on a lake. And so most of my experience was actually on the lake. My parents were, we always had camping adventures and, near water and that kind of thing. So it's always been a part of my story. I mean, it's just always been part of what we did growing up. And, everybody we knew knew how to swim. Yeah. And so it wasn't until much later when I realized, and probably even when I was in college, when I realized how many people really didn't know how to swim. I went to a school where we did have a swim test. That was a requirement.
Was that
but to go back a little bit, growing up on that lake, I worked at a marina where we rented out boats and such on a lake in Ohio. And so again, just always had that exposure to water. But it wasn't until I got out of high school into college when I first got certified as a lifeguard and also as I got certified as a water safety instructor.
Was that swim test in high school or was that in college?
College. It was college. Yeah, it was a college entrance. And so if you passed the swim test, then you were able to, to move on into other things for your physical education requirement. Mm-hmm. But for anybody who did not know how to swim, they then did have to take a swim test and be able to pass it. It was a requirement to graduate from college to be able to pass a swim test. It would sure be nice if we had those kind of requirements still today. And I think that would help really change a cycle of things down the road. But then after college, so during college, I would come back and I worked at that same lake, but now as a lifeguard. We did not offer swim lessons at that lake, but that was the first time I became a water safety instructor was while I was in college during those summer times. After college, I moved to South Florida, and it was City of Coral Springs is where I had my first professional Parks and Rec job. And it was because of my certifications that I got through the Red Cross through college that set me up on a great job in a great city that just really allowed me to grow and have so many opportunities. But I always kept a toe in the water.
Yeah.
So even as I was moving up through the system with that city, I would stop at the pool on the way home and teach swimming lessons.
Oh,
And it's a really a great kind of uh, grounding kind of thing to say, no matter what you just dealt with in City Hall, you going back and seeing those, the progress that you're making with those little kids just made a huge difference.
I have to say it's kind of nice. We're glued to our cell phones, and I think you and I are glued to our computers 90% of the time now. But what I miss about teaching swim lessons, and I'm sure it's the same for you, is like that disconnect where like, nope, we're just in the
Yeah.
pool, we're teaching swimming, and it's just all focused on what you're doing and no distractions. And it's kind of nice when you sit back and think about that.
It really is. I mean, and I just remember some of the stress of the work
Mhm.
and just so much on your mind and you think you're going to take it home with you and then you spend an hour and a half or an hour and a half doing a couple of sessions of swimming lessons and then it just
Melts away.
relieves a lot of that stress, kind of makes you realize what really matters here.
Exactly. Yeah. So what led you to your career at the American Red Cross?
So it goes back to family once again. My dad was a Red Cross instructor, mainly in first aid and CPR when I was a kid. So there were always Red Cross manuals around our house. And then when I was in college and got certified as a lifeguard and a swim instructor, um, when I moved to South Florida, it made great sense. We were in a city where we were really trying to do a lot more. I was in Broward County
Mhm.
where there were a lot of drownings. And so it was important to us as we were growing our infrastructure there to make certain that we had as many resources available to the community that we served as possible. And so that took me back into working more directly with the Red Cross, getting involved in the Water Safety Committee, getting involved in the Florida Recreation and Park Association. We had a strong Broward County group as well. But then we started doing aquatic schools again in South Florida. And that was really the fun, cool connection for a lot of us, to be able to get that higher level training and help others within the Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach counties to be able to get that training that was needed. Um, and then I met my future husband,
Mhm.
and we were deciding if we figured we needed to decide if we liked each other in the same state or not. So I was moving to the DC area, and one of the colleagues that I had met through working in the water safety schools in South Florida, she worked for the national headquarters of the Red Cross. So I reached out to her when I was moving to the area and said, "Hey, I am interested in moving up here. Can I use you as a reference?" And she was like, "Yeah, but why don't you come work here instead?" And
Oh,
so that is literally how it all began. And so when I came to the Red Cross, I started in educational development. One of the very first projects I ever worked on was small craft safety. And
mhm.
then another was the first one I ever led was our initial foray into junior lifeguarding, Guard Start. Remember that program,
I
Lifeguarding
do.
Tomorrow? So that was my first main project, and so I've been with the organization ever since. And so I came to the Red Cross in 1996 and have been there ever since. So, and
Wow.
it's wonderful. It's an awesome organization. Um, where every day that you're making a positive difference in somebody's life.
Well, and I think so many people, I mean, that's how I got my start in aquatics was the American Red Cross. And I will say I was not a swimmer, went through swim lessons at the Y, and I remember, the Red Cross swim lessons growing up. But I won't say I ever excelled at swimming as a competitive sport. And I'm not built as a swimmer. I was the lifeguard, power lifter, wrestler, and I always thought it'd be really cool to be a lifeguard during the summer, right? You grow up kind of idolizing that lifeguard at the local pool during the summer, and I'm like, I want to do that someday. So, of course, I'm 15 in high school, and they're announcing they're doing a lifeguarding class, and thank God it was the like once a week for 12 weeks model of teaching the course, which was much more common back then. Now it's, much more common to see we're doing this in 2 weekends, right? Because I took the prerequisite test and I powered through it. It was the 500-yard swim at the time. And the instructor is standing above me as I like finished, and he's like, "Oh, that was bad." And he goes, "I don't think this is for you." And I said, "I'm going to work really hard at it." I mean, I worked hard for those 12 weeks and built my swimming skills up. And it's kind of cool. 2 years later, he's the guy that was making me an instructor, and then, eventually the IT level. But I find so many people in this space, their initial start was that first interaction with the American Red Cross, whether whatever their career is now in aquatics, it typically started with the Red Cross. And I think that is something, I know many of us, you and I included, find that real special.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the Red Cross is so present throughout the entire United States. We have providers throughout the country, whether it's lifeguarding, swimming and water safety, just on the aquatic side. Then, of course, you think about the bigger mission of the American Red Cross as well. And, from our blood services to service to armed forces, international activities. It's such an amazing organization that literally changes and saves lives every day. I mean, our disaster teams, and you think about any given day of the year, there is a Red Cross presence somewhere for somebody
Yep.
that is changing or saving their life.
Well, you think about the national disasters we face or international disasters that we see the Red Cross responding to. When I was 19, my parents had a house fire, and
Oh
I
wow.
was at college at the time. And yeah, their 2007 Suburban decided that it was time to self-ignite inside the garage. We could have a whole other podcast episode on that story, but
Wow.
but what was special to me, and working for the Red Cross, or with the Red Cross for a number of years at this point. And then I, of course, got the phone call when I was at school, and, I think literally flew home on the interstate that day. And when I pulled into my parents' driveways, there was the Red Cross van pulling right in as well. So yeah, that was, and I think people forget sometimes, because a lot of us are only focused on aquatics or in this industry, but how much the American Red Cross actually does in this
Mm-hmm.
country
Oh yes,
is incredible.
absolutely.
And I do have to embarrass you just a tad bit, because I always say Connie and I have been teaching together for way longer than I've actually known Connie, because when I became a CPR instructor all those years ago, you were on the video co-teaching with me.
Yes, yes. So I was one of the talent, and I put that in quotes, for the first aid CPR AED program several years
Mhm.
ago. And a funny story about that is that I was living in Japan at the time. So my husband was in the Air Force, and we were stationed at Yokota Air Base in Japan at the time. And so I would fly back to the US for, several weeks at a time,
Mhm.
and do just, obviously those courses are long when you put all the different pieces together, and the science was kind of emerging as we would go along, as far as what
Yep.
was known to be true as far as the latest set of ILCOR guidelines and such. So we were having, certain things shot in different ways based on, is it going to be 30 and 2 or 15 and 2, or what is the rate? So it was a pretty significant effort.
Oh, I bet.
But a funny story, I was teaching an instructor course on base at Yokota, and we did not clue in the students that I was on the video. And so we're sitting there, myself and my co-instructor trainer, we're sitting at the table, and you can see the students, kind of sat up a little bit, and they're like looking at me, looking at screen, looking at me. It's like, is that really you?
And if memory serves me right, I want to say the gentleman you were with in the video, his name was Ryan, maybe.
Ryan,
Yeah,
yes,
I don't know
yes.
why that sticks with me, but I do remember that. And it would have just been hilarious had he been your co-instructor or instructor trainer.
Right, right, really thrown them off, really thrown them off. But it's so funny how what kind of a legacy that has been. I
Mhm.
still get people asking me for my autograph. They'll bring the book or a skills card or something. It's funny.
I have not ever asked you for that, but you know what? I may actually still have that on DVD somewhere in my library. So don't be surprised if I track you down at a
Don't be
conference and
surprised.
make you sign that. Yeah, I don't even know if I still have a DVD player, but I know
Right,
it's
still have a
still out
DVD.
there. I do want to ask a little bit about, I want to start with the Red Cross work in water safety, but then go a little bit broader to some of the other, components we've been working on, because I think you'd agree with this that over the last decade or so, water safety has really hit, I don't even want to say a stride, but almost got a shot in the arm with, I don't know
Hmm.
whether it's we're all becoming more organized, collectively working together, the space is advancing, getting more attention. It's probably a confluence of all of that in some way. But I know any history in water safety in the US starts with the Red Cross. Commodore Longfellow and starting water safety. But I know you may have not been at the Red Cross that long, but you have a significant history there. So, what have you seen both inside the Red Cross, and then we can talk about outside transition with water safety? Where do we see this heading? And, talk a little bit about the Centennial Campaign, because I think a lot of people hear the Centennial Campaign, but maybe don't know what it is.
Sure. So the Red Cross added drowning prevention to its mission in 1914. And as you mentioned, Wilbur D. Longfellow was the gentleman that was tapped to lead the organization's water safety program. And interestingly, um, this has always been about partnerships. And that I think is what also makes so much of the work that we're doing today so cool and so rewarding as well. So the Boy Scouts and the YMCA came to the Red Cross and said, "Hey, we need to do something about this, collectively, about the drowning problem in the United States." Back then, the drowning rate was 10.4 deaths per 100,000 related to drowning, and so the Red Cross did not own swimming pools. The YMCA's, of course, had swimming pools. The Boy Scouts had camps, situations, and such often. Um, but we had at the Red Cross already had a national system set up related to our first aid training, essentially. And so that was kind of the catalyst to say, y'all have this background, you've got the infrastructure in place related to being able to deliver training and help get into communities more so than their organizations, but they could bring the water and other expertise to the table as well.
Sure.
So our engagement with partners has been from day one in this space. So then Wilbert E. Longfellow, we called him, he was called the amiable whale, really big guy. And he was a showman. So so he kind of had a threefold thing about bringing water safety to the United States. First was to identify areas where there were drownings happening and train people up to be lifeguards, and then kind of convince the towns to hire people to be lifesavers, is what they called them back in the day, but hire people to be lifesavers in these places that were vulnerable to drowning. So like natural environments, a lot, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and then the other part was get people interested in enjoying the water and doing so safely, and then having a system of instruction where there could be large scale instruction for people knowing how to swim. One of the things that he did was he did these pageants, and he traveled throughout the United States, and again a lot of cooperation and collaboration with the Boy Scouts in particular,
Right.
to help make people aware of the enjoyment factor of the water, but also that you need to enjoy it safely. And there's some great slogans attributed to him related to, you can't just slap the water, but you need to hug it one armful at a time. But then he also had, his deal was um, entertain them hugely and educate them gently. So it's like, bring these pageants and teach water safety, and they may not even understand that they're learning as they go. And that really is the underpinning of whale tales. And so Longfellow's whale tales, whale stands for water habits are learned early. And so, it was only fitting that Wilbert D. Longfellow would be our mascot. The big blue whale would be our mascot for that program.
Yeah.
So kind of going back again, so over time there have been, the different iterations of, starting the first Learn to Swim program for the Red Cross, and the water safety instructor was, he is, water safety instructor number one. That is a phrase, a title, certification that was coined by Wilbert E. Longfellow, and has always been the embodiment of the training and certification that goes behind those who teach swimming lessons for the American Red Cross. And when I say swimming lessons in this phrasing, it's everything from the parent-child aquatics, preschool aquatics, the school age Learn to Swim program, and the adult swimming program. So we're obviously so proud that we still are doing so much of that same work, moving with the times. Our lifeguarding program is about to release again. We update things on a routine basis. So lifeguarding is about to release. And as we talk about, some keeping up with the times, we're going to have, for the first time, virtual reality that goes along with that to help lifeguards be able to get more experience of what it's like from the start of their training, to know, what it, give you simulations as to what it looks like with someone in trouble in the water and such. So, we just continue in that work. We are, like I'd say, about to release the lifeguarding program. We are also revising our Whale Tales program right now, and it's so cool to see some of the it's completely reimagined this time. Yeah. So we're excited to let people know about that in the coming months. And then swimming and water safety is up next. So some of the work is underway now to make certain, and has been actually for several years, to make certain that we have what we need to be able to have a refreshed program that meets the needs of today.
Yeah. Well, and before I ask the question, what is the Centennial Campaign? Tell us a little bit about that. And I know it started 100 years after the Red Cross got involved in water safety, but go ahead. I'll let you have the floor and explain what the Centennial Campaign is all about.
Sure. So we launched the Centennial Campaign in 2014. So Centennial to mark the 100-year milestone of when we added drowning prevention to our mission. And our intent here was to go into, we were identifying 50 communities where the drowning rate or the numbers of drownings were higher than the national average. And we wanted to see if we could make a bigger impact. Mm-hmm. And so we work with our training providers. We start with our field team, our Red Cross field team. Once we identify where the counties are, we use the CDC's Whiskers data to help guide us where to go for that data of numbers and rates of drowning. And then we work with our sales team, our aquatics representatives, to say, who are some Red Cross training providers in this community that has the ability to expand what we're doing. We are working to make it so that swimming lessons, water safety education, lifeguarding, swim instructor training, CPR training is available, accessible, and affordable in communities where it's needed most. And so once we identify with our aquatics team who would be good Red Cross providers in those communities, then we do the conversations with the providers and say, where is it needed most in your community?
Yeah.
And we are often in areas that are where Title I schools are, or like transforming neighborhood initiatives, those kinds of state, regional, federal designations where, quite frankly, there are often other social determinants where the need is great in this community, whether it is lower economics, food insecurity, health inequities, that kind of thing. So a lot of that aligns and helps us serve parts of the community. We talk about creating an ecosystem of water safety. And our providers where we are, overwhelmingly, they already have a strong ecosystem of water safety if you look at their community as a whole. But when we sit down and say, all right, let's really dig into the community, and are there any places that are being underserved, any pools that are sitting there without swimming lessons happening, or where when you offer lessons they don't fill up. And that's where we want to be. We want to help them make certain that ecosystem of water safety applies in all the nooks and crannies of their community.
Well, and I think that's important for a couple different reasons. I mean, one of the things we talk about, and we'll come back to this with some of the latest happenings in water safety in a few minutes, but I always use the phrase that I can't say I created it. I think I steal this from the World Conference on Drowning Prevention or one of their past themes, but it's the idea of, we kind of plan and think globally, but, really prevent and implement locally, right? And it's great that there's all this work being done at the national level, but it really needs to be done in communities all across this country. And I mean, my gosh, there's 3,000 plus counties in this country. And I think a lot of people, think about urbanized communities. There's also rural communities that struggle with this too, where, you might not have, we talk about food deserts, we talk about pool deserts, just in that same regard, right? Where you have these communities where, and frankly, what we have to acknowledge is, and you kind of alluded to it, people who can't purchase food, don't have enough money, don't know where they're getting their next meal from. Sometimes water safety is not the first thing on their mind or the first priority that their family might have if they're struggling to, pay for rent or the heating bill or whatever it might be. So being able to come in and uplift these communities and then hopefully, educate other communities about what's possible if you do these investments. I mean, I think that is something that we need to celebrate, all this work happening across this country at the local level, because that's really where those impacts are made.
Absolutely. And, the success of a program like the Centennial Campaign relies upon the professionals at that frontline level.
Right.
And the one of the questions that I often ask when we are meeting first with a program is, if you had more to do more, what would it be? And they have an answer. They always have an answer. And it's like, all right, let's see how we can make it work.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty cool and pretty special, and speaks a lot about the people who have chosen aquatics as either an entry into their long-term professional career, or as a profession. And it is an awesome and impactful profession.
Yeah. Well, I also want to expand this out a little bit because, one thing I think kind of you and I kind of laugh at sometimes is sometimes people have this perception that all of our organizations are in direct competition with each other and we have nothing nice to say about each other and we don't work together. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. I think that's why we giggle a lot, because frankly, some of my, best professional colleagues, or I'd say even best friends in the industry, are people that work for other organizations that we get to collaborate. I mean, you and I, among 7 others, have been meeting routinely. I'd like to say sometimes it was multiple times a week, sometimes it was every other week, for the past, 4 or 5 years now, developing the first U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan. And I just want to get your perspective on, the importance of a plan like we've developed. Why, do you as Connie and the Red Cross, care about this? And, because I really think this helps set up a roadmap for collaboration for all of us in the future and what we need to address with drowning prevention. But I'll kind of pause there and just get your thoughts on that.
One of the things that I have said over recent years is momentum.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of momentum that has been able to make this happen. I think one of the coolest things that helped get a ball in motion anyway was the creation of Water Safety USA.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that it was the brainchild of U.S. Life Saving Association, YMCA of the USA, and the American Red Cross. And an interesting thing is we thought it would be simple, thought it would be easy to reach out to other agencies, governmental organizations, national nonprofits that had water safety or drowning prevention as part of its mission. And we thought that would be easy. We could send out invitations in, August and have a meeting in September. No, it took us months to understand who should we be talking to at the National Park Service, at the U.S. Coast Guard, at NDPA, at, the list goes on and on. We finally had our first in-person gathering in February. It took us that long in order to find out who, which organizations really should be at the table and who the appropriate person was. But that's now been, I don't even know how long ago that was, 10, 12 years ago.
Wow.
Now we all have each other on speed dial.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I think, the if nothing else ever came out of Water Safety USA, just the fact that we all know each other again and we work together so collaboratively. And that has put a lot in motion for this, in my humble opinion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, and many of us had attended the World Congress on Drowning in Vancouver,
Mm-hmm.
and the World Health Organization had come out with their recommendation that every country should have a national water safety action plan. And when we were in Vancouver and looking around at all of these countries that did, and the United States did not, it was like, okay, we need to do something about this. And so that's really where it was born for us to start this work. And it was kind of facilitated by Water Safety USA, but then it moved essentially out of Water Safety USA into its own steering committee of 9 of these organizations that do such, have such a long history of doing this work. And it is just amazing to think about how much time we all spent together and how much, and it wasn't always smooth sailing. We were very fortunate to have Morag Mackay as our leader, but everyone around that table, I think, when you have that kind of a work product that you're driving toward with, to some, seemingly competing priorities, the fact that I think our relationships have just deepened and become stronger, and the respect even more that we all have for each other and for the work that all of our organizations do, which creates such a sense of trust to be able to say, all right, we can do anything together here.
Well, I do have to bring up, I mean, one of my favorite memories of working on the action plan is not the full steering committee. It is, so for the listeners, Connie and I served on the steering committee, and we broke the steering committee down into what I think 3 small groups of 3 people, and we were each charged with, as recommendations would come forward from the working groups, to review them, provide comments, feedback, questions. And randomly, our group was assigned that Connie and myself and Rebecca Ware Robinson got paired together. And oh gosh, I don't even know how many hours those meetings were, but it was almost like, it felt like every Friday for a year. But those were some of my favorite conversations, because we really truly, each of us approached things in a different way. We got to approach each recommendation in a unique way. And depending on, where we were at in the week and what our mood was, sometimes that would shine through a little bit. But the action plan is a fantastic work product. I'm really excited for the outline that it mentioned, but for someone who served on the steering committee, and I think this is what you're getting at, I mean, not just that extended collaboration, but really the meaningful collaboration between all of us on the steering committee, and understanding what each organization's approach is and how each organization and individual approaches water safety, to me was some of the best learnings. Yeah, I'm a little bit sad we don't have those meetings. I texted Rebecca a few weeks ago. I'm like, I feel like you and Connie and I need to get on an afternoon.
I know, we just need to get together. But also, I mean, we're talking so much about the steering committee, but you think about how many people gave so much to that. And, so then we all had our, working groups that we were liaisons with. And so just the breadth of the professionals who are doing this work day in and day out is so incredible. And now that I think the importance of this plan is that, number one, there were so many stakeholders involved that there is just so much energy now around, okay, now what next? What can we do now to help move the dial? And having this plan is going to be helpful in so many ways, because we can say, we can look at the recommendations and say, what is it that are some very concrete steps that we can be taking to actually make a very meaningful difference. There's lots of work to do, but just getting it on paper and in a plan where we can share it with donors and legislators, our own leaders within our organizations, to say, while we've been at this for 5 years, we're really just getting started. Yep. There is so much more for us to do. And there, of course, we can never have a water safety, drowning prevention conversation without talking about Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Senator Klobuchar, and the enthusiasm and commitment that they have to this topic. That is also helping us get federal funding. There's so much work that's going on with the CDC right now that's really going to help us fully understand the issue of drowning. Because as much as we know, there's so much that we don't know. And we do know that it's underreported, especially the non-fatal. And, we need to understand that in order to make certain that there are interventions that are going to change that at every level.
Well, and we talk a lot about the statistics, but, one number that I keep bringing up since I saw this, republishing of the statistic, and CDC provides, cost of injuries every 10 years. And drowning went from like an estimated 7 billion the last time they updated this to now over $50 billion a year it's costing the US economy. I mean, it's staggering to even see. And I never thought that we would have to use the economic argument as well with this, but to even say to donors, to policymakers, I mean, look, this isn't just the emotional tie-in, right? The fact that this issue breaks up families, it hurts families, and then to the flip side, where we can actually now have to bring forward a really big economic argument, saying, look, if that doesn't speak to you, this is costing the U.S. economy a significant amount of money each year.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's just so much attention on it now, and that is amazing. Obviously, it helps that globally there is an interest and a lot of energy that just helps buoy what the U.S. is wanting to do, doing, and trying to do more.
Yeah. Well, Connie, as we kind of wrap up, this has been a great discussion. I know you and I could probably talk for like 3 more hours about all the history and the work that has been done and is yet to come. But I'm going to ask you the same question at the end I ask everyone, which is, I am handing you a magical water safety wand, and you get to change one thing, big or small. What would you change in water safety?
Is it too big to say I would change it so that there were 0 drownings?
No, that's aspirational. I really like that.
It's very aspirational. I know, unrealistic, But goodness, that's what we're all working for, right? But just I think one of the phrases that sticks with me the most whenever talking with a family who has lost a loved one to drowning is "I didn't know." And being able to change the conversation, the system, so that those words never have to be uttered. Whether we're talking about what a new mom needs to know as she's, has a baby and is learning about all of the dangers that might be lurking for that child, that drowning prevention water safety is part of that. That kids learn about water safety from the moment they enter daycare. It actually even begins when they're these are part of the books that parents are reading to the children, and the babysitters are reading to the children, so that they understand the basics of water safety, and the whole family can apply them at every time. So I think just making it that water safety, drowning prevention is just part of the national conversation, so that we have public service announcements on a broadcast scale, large scale, during the Super Bowl that talk about they don't have to be scary, but just to make certain that people understand that drowning is the number one cause of death for kids between the ages of 1 and 4. And it is in one of the top 10 causes of accidental death for people at every stage of life. It happens at any point in time. It does not discriminate, although there are disparities. It does not discriminate. Drowning can happen to anyone, anywhere there is water, and people need to understand that so they can protect themselves from that.
Well, one thing that we've talked a lot about at NDPA is breaking what we call the stigma of drowning with parents, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard, they must have been bad parents. They didn't watch their children. Well, when you truly know how drowning happens and the true facts around it, it's really not bad parenting. It's parenting. You have to take, watching your kid 24/7 is an impossibility. As Julie Gilchrist often says to me, parents do have to use the restroom too, just like everyone else. And that's the same time period of drowning can take place. So I think you're right, making people understand the risks and making them understand that it can happen to them really changes the dynamic. And I think that's something we're all singing that song in unison. So that's really exciting. Well, Connie, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us and share a little bit about your water safety history and your work with the American Red Cross. As I said at the beginning, a true water safety champion. You've been one of my heroes, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on this important issue as we move forward. Next up on the Water Safety Champions podcast, we'll have Julian Hefner, the Executive Director of the Association of Aquatic Professionals. Thanks for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much, Connie.